the first day I left for agriculture college, my mother, she showed me the farm financials. And we hadn't made money in over 5 years. And she says to me, if you don't fix these numbers, I'm leaving your father. Now, I might be paid to be a motivation speaker, but my mother, she's one heck of a motivation speaker. So I went off to college to save the family farm. And when I was there, I did a course one-on-one with a university professor, and he taught me how to write a business plan. And I spent 8 months putting together a 200-page plan. I was so proud of myself, I could hardly wait to give it to my father. He looked at it, and he opened the firebox, and he threw it straight in the fire. And after that, I wrote 18 completely different business plans. And by my final year of college, I was getting really frustrated. And we had a big fight that Christmas. And what I did, my Uncle Claude, he stepped in. He was the ultimate good old boy. You'd love him. And he stepped in, and he says, well, why don't you give the boy the field behind the barn? He could try out his ideas there. If they work, great. If they don't, no big deal. So that's what we went and did. And I know what you're thinking. I was not growing pot behind the barn. That was my cousin Elroy down the road. But the thing is, it was a bit complicated to explain here. But my Uncle Claude, he walked in the house, and my dad was washing his hands, and he slaps my dad on the back, and he says, your boy is going to make more money off of an acre than you're going to make off the entire farm this year. And he just laughed. He just thought it was fun. My dad did not think it was fun. And a couple of days later, you wouldn't believe this, but my dad plowed down my crops. Mine. And nobody in the county could figure out why. And I spent a long time trying to understand, why would a man who was about to lose his wife, about to lose the farm, be so abrasive to any suggestions for change? And this is driven, I became obsessed by this question. And this drives what I do today, and it's going to be what I'm going to be talking to you folks about. But before I go further, I should just tell you the funny story. The thing is, my mom, she told my dad, do not buy any more farming equipment until you have sat down and written a business plan with your son. And my dad, he went to an auction sale, and he bought himself a manure spreader, and he came home, and I guess you could say the shit hit the fan. And my parents did actually get divorced. But what I've been doing with my life is turning the BS around and to fertilize. I started off by helping my friends in Western Ontario, and the last decade, all I've been doing is saving family farms all across North America. Starting off by helping my friends, I look at farm succession and farm debt. But it all comes down to the root issue of how farm families make decisions together. And it all comes down to that root issue of what caused my dad to plow down my crops. I spent a long time looking into this. And basically, when young lads come home from agriculture college, they got 1,001 ideas as to how to improve the operation. Now, at some point, the parents are always encouraging the kids to change for the first few years. And then at some point, these suggestions for change are perceived as a criticism of past management decisions. And at some point, if the daughter says black, dad says white, just because pride starts to get in the way. And soon, if the dad says black, the daughter says white, because she's hurt by her father and mother saying no to her suggestions for change. And soon, change becomes a dirty word on the family operation. And that was fine 50 years ago. But, I mean, change is critical in order to get through this next crisis we're about to get into. And what we haven't realized is that what's the biggest change we've had in technology over the last 50 years isn't GPS, it isn't modern computers, I believe anyways. It's the fact that fewer farmers dropping dead of heart attacks in their 50s than back in the 1950s. Modern health sciences is a game changer. Now, I'm not talking about Viagra. I mean, that's a whole different presentation on succession. But the thing is, back in the 60s, when Dad was 60, he couldn't wait to retire, right? He'd help out now and then. but his hips were shot. But nowadays, Dad's getting hip replacement, or he's getting a piece of cancer taken out of his body, or getting a heart stent, and he's farming into his 80s or 90s. And if you want to farm to the day you die, I'm all about making that happen. It's my favorite thing to be able to sit in a combine and talk to 80 or 90, 93. I've sat in a 93-year-old in the combine. It's my favorite thing to be able to do. I really am a firm believer in this. But the problem we have in most family farms is we got 2, if not 3 generations farming together. And because the economies of scale required to be successful these days, we got 2 or 3 cousins farming together, or 2 or 3 siblings. And suddenly what do we have? Not one dictator on the farm. We have a lot of dictators on the farm. We got too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And everybody's butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions. And you just get nowhere fast. And this is a crisis of leadership we never really thought about. We never thought about, I believe that at least half the critical decisions that should be made are not getting made because either you're having a power struggle or it's an issue nobody wants to talk about because you're trying to walk on eggshells, not have World War III on the farm. And there's a lot of cash that's slipping between the cracks because of that. And this dysfunctional decision making has created dysfunctional families as well as dysfunctional businesses. And what we haven't realized is that back in the 80s farm crisis, we had sole proprietor operations mostly. And a guy got bad news from the bank. He could just drive into town after spending a week plowing and not talking to anybody and go see a couple people and make several decisions and turn around the farm. But the problem we have now is we've had commodity prices drop by half, and here we have a situation where we have 2 or 3 business partners who have never sat down to discuss how we're going to turn this thing around yet, until they're too desperate. And too often, on most family farms, we haven't dropped our cost of production by 5%, let alone that 50% we have to make up for. And there's a lot of farms that are hemorrhaging cash. And we've got a situation where we're just like the Titanic heading towards an iceberg. And it's scary. And I think the key thing is we got to turn working with family from weakness into strength. We got to stop butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions. We got to stop being tough on one another and start being able to make tough decisions together. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So, what does vegetable producers and fruit producers have to do with a farm boy from Bob Cajun who's a cowboy? The thing is, when I left for college, the extension agent was on our farm, and our cost of production was $1.20, and we were getting paid 83 cents a pound. We were hemorrhaging cash. I think there's a few folks here that are in the same situation. And, you know, I thought the simple solution was to, we had politicians promise us big subsidies. We got pennies on the dollar. I remember going to farm protest rallies and throwing an egg and feeling that felt good to blame the politicians. But it really did nothing for us. My dad thought the market price would go up any day. And I grew up in a household where the only discussion was the argument about whether to pull the plug on the farm or the fact that the market prices would rise up any day. And this went on for 5 years. As a teenager, I thought the solution was to create demand for beef. So I went door to door when I was 15, 16, 17 and knocked on all the doors like a Jehovah's Witness, trying to convert all the vegetarians in my hometown to eat beef. That did happen. And it did nothing for us. And so I went off to agriculture college. I thought the magic solution was to sit in the library 12 hours a day and write these business plans and bring home those ideas to the family farm. And in theory, that was true. But the problem is, in reality, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And when I went home, I told my dad what to do. And what was the wrong word. I should have focused on the word why. Because until my dad was on the same page as I was, until my dad really thought the markets were going to go up or there was going to be government subsidies. He didn't think that he had to change. And until he was motivated that, Dad, why don't we get our cost of production below the lowest price that the market are providing, so that, you know, if the markets go up, we're making money. But if the markets don't, we're able to survive. I didn't have that discussion with them. And as a result, I'm not farming today. 7 generations. The first white man killed on the back end of the township in 1832. That farm's gone. It sucks to say that. But the thing is that I've learned how to turn family farms around ever since. And I've been doing this for 10 years. And the one lesson I can tell you that you guys can go home and apply today is you got to set a very simple, tough goal. And, you know, JFK, he said, we're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years' time. And the man got shot, and the goal still got achieved. He got thousands of people working on the same goal because it was a simple one line. And I believe on every family farm, you got to get a simple line. I'll give you an example. I walked onto a farm. This is 2013. They were farm family of the county in 2013, and they were a bit full of themselves. They'd grown quite a bit substantially over the last 5 years. They were guys I went to college with, and I show up to the farm the day after the banker had been there. Basically, what they had done was go buy the farm across the road. And in order to do that, what happened, there was a divorce. Nobody expected the babysitter and the father to be getting along so good. And so they had, there was 200 acres that they had bought just down the road earlier that year. So for that farm to buy 300 acres in a year, that's a pretty substantial bill. So they went through a bank audit to be able to get the cash. And the thing is, the banker came out, and they thought it was a mere formality because they were so well respected in the county. The banker came out with his boss, and the boss says, not only are we not going to take this, give you the loan to buy this farm, we're going to take this farm away. Things just turned around right there and then. So I show up the day after the banker had been out there. And we sat in the shop. It was beautiful. They had a little marble table in the corner of the shop. It was a 3-bay shop, beautiful operation. And I walked in, and the 27-year-old son, he was looking at the financial reports, and he says, well, how does the banker expect us to drop our cost of production down to $3.20? He says, that's impossible. The report here says that we're losing $200 an acre, and today it's $7 more. How does the bank, I want the banker to come out here and tell us how to farm. And then they spent, I think it was about 45 minutes arguing, and it got really nasty. And then they started blaming each other for the problems, not sitting down and figuring out how to solve the problem. They got into blaming each other. And I got up, and they thought I was going to use the washer. And I got up, and I grabbed a can of spray paint off the side of the bench. And I put $3.20 on the side of the shop. And the one brother grabs me by the shoulder, and I had knocked out the can of spray paint in my hand. And he just says, "What the heck are you doing?" I'm paraphrasing what he was saying. What the heck are you doing to my shop? And I said, "This ain't your shop anymore. It's the bank's. You got a year to earn it back." And then I said, "You got to get your cost of production down to $3.20, and nothing else matters. All this crying over spilled milk, things that happened wrong in the past, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you guys get together, work towards common cause, get this cost of production down to $3.20. And he looked at me, he was about to cold cock me. And then you could see the light go on in his eyes. The same thing with the whole family. And 2 years later, they dropped the cost of production to $3.20. It took them 2 years, but the bank seen such substantial change that they worked with them. And, you know, I'll give you a couple examples of things that they did. The father, he was a John Deere man. I swore he wore green underwear, you know, and he had an addiction to going to farm machinery auctions and buying equipment. And they had to build a 200-foot shed just to house this extra equipment a year before. And he kept on buying conventional tillage equipment. They had 2 full lines of conventional tillage equipment sitting in the shed. They were no-tillers for 7 years. And he thought, oh, there's a deal, I'll flip it someday. He refused to flip this equipment. He got sentimental about this equipment. And so he showed up to the 7th week. We had meetings. Each week we made a few improvements to the operation. The 7th week, he showed up, and the week before, the boys had suggested getting variable rate fertilizer spreader and getting a variable rate seed drill so that they could drop their cost of inputs. And so anyways, they couldn't get the credit from the bank. They didn't know how they were going to do it. And he shows up to the shop. He says, you know, why don't we get rid of half this equipment on our farm? And we'll use that capital to buy the seed drill that you guys think is so important. And I don't even care if it's John Deere anymore. All that matters is that it gets the job done. I mean, if you knew this man, hell just froze over. But why did that happen? One number in the side of the shed. The one brother, they had bought a $2 million farm next door, only had 22 acres that were tillable, had over $1 million home, had a pool. It had 2 pools, actually, one inside and one outside. It was lavish. And the brother came after about 8 weeks of these meetings, each week identifying ways to improve. He came to the meeting and he says, you know, let's sell the farm I'm living on. And I never liked Grandma's house, but Grandma, she's been in the nursing home for the last 2 years. She ain't coming back. And it's only a 1,200 square foot house, but I'm willing to live there until we get out of this bind. Big drop in his lifestyle. Why did he do that? One number in the side of the shed. The 2 brothers got in a fight out in the yard one day, and it all came down to the stress of this farm. One brother, again, was about to cold cock his other brother. And his sister-in-law, who he hated, yelled across the yard, what does this have to do with 320 corn? Stop that fight. And all the bickering after that really subsided, because all that mattered was getting their cost of production to 320. And their cost of production today is $2.25. There's on the side of the shed, they spray painted over the 320, and their goal is $2. And that family, the grandkids had never played together. The siblings really just hated each other. They are the best friends now, because one simple number unified them. Instead of having dysfunctional decision making, which created a dysfunctional family and a dysfunctional business, they really improved how they made decisions together. And everything, farming became fun again. And I cannot stress to you enough how one simple number can make a difference in your farm. The other thing I want to talk to you about is how to turn around decision making so you can actually achieve this number. Sorry, I got a holy smackerel. I've got a few stones in my shoe. I don't know what I was doing last night. Oh! I'm not acting either this time. You know, as farmers, we have a common sense for a minute to just take a stone out of your shoe. You know, had I walked around with these stones in my shoe for a couple of days, I'd be lame. A couple of months, I'd have gangrene. I'd have to cut it off. I had a cousin down the road that's what he had to do. But the thing is, this stone just rubs you the wrong way. And it might seem foolish to not take a stone out of your shoe. But how many family farms do we know of where there's pet peeves, like somebody showing up late to work? Or there's production problems where the 3 of you guys are involved in making decisions and you're constantly bickering about it. And it's like a stone in your shoe. And it really never gets solved. And, you know, these things rub you the wrong way, until quite often families fall apart. And And I believe that farming should be 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. And the problem we're having is right now, it's 100% perspiration. You take a farm, like everybody works at least 50 hours in their farm a week, right? Probably a lot of you guys working 80 hours a week. Well, let's just take a 50-hour week, and over the course of a month, that's 200 hours. What's 1% of 200? It's 2 hours, right? There's very few families that sit down for a 2-hour strategic planning meeting throughout the month. And my argument is pretty simple. Just sit down for half an hour on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and everybody come to the table with one idea as to how to improve how you guys work together. What's a little pet peeve? And if you have 4 family members come to the table, that's 4 improvements to your operation and how you guys work together. And then you come to the table with one idea as to how to improve farm production. And I like to liken it to adding kindling on the fire. You start off with small problems, like kindling, and as you're able to weigh the pros and cons, you add logs to the fire. You're able to deal with bigger problems. And I think that the thing is, the stone rubbing you the wrong way, it can kill a family farm, and quite often does. But if you make, let's just say, over 52 weeks, you make 2 improvements each week. That's over 100 improvements to your operation. You want to talk about how to turn around an operation down to drop your cost of production? That's how you do it. And it's so simple, but I've seen it work so many times. If you problem solve the fundamentals of how you problem solve itself, the problems will quickly dissipate. The last thing I want to talk to you about is where you're at and really understanding where you're at. And I'm telling you this story. I never told anybody this until about 6 weeks ago. I'm telling you this not out of disrespect to my family, but out of respect to yours. My Uncle Gerald was the best farmer in our county. He had 5 men working for him. He did the work of 5 men himself. If you could keep up with Gerald for half a day, you were a real man. He was a go kind of guy. The thing is, just because you're successful 5 years ago doesn't mean you'll be successful 5 years from now. And Gerald fooled himself. He had been through tough times before, and there was a few stones in his shoe that just were rubbing him the wrong way, but he pretended to ignore them and just work harder. And he had options in 1980 and 81. By 1983, he ran out of options. I was 8 years old. I was underneath the hay wagon when it was being sold. My Uncle Gerald should have been using that hay wagon that day. But the thing is, he had to make bank payments. And he had to sell all the machinery that didn't move that day. And my mom, she said, oh, he's done too little, too late. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I can't go back in a time machine and shake Gerald. But I hope that you guys don't go through what Gerald went through. And we talk about risk. I don't think we realize what risk could actually mean. The thing is that Gerald, he lost his wife and the kids. His family, his brothers disowned him for ruining the family name, which is a big deal back then. The community turned their back on him. But that's not the worst of it. You know, when you go out and feed cattle every day, and you're recognized as being one of the best cattle feeders in the county, if not the state, it's hard to imagine that barn being empty. It's hard to imagine somebody else having their family name on your farm. My Uncle Gerald, he not only lost the entire farm, he became homeless a few years after. His health really failed him. He had worked from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night every day of his life. And that caught up to him as he didn't stop for lunch ever. He just was go all that time. He was a hard-working man. So he got diabetes. And he couldn't support himself, and he was homeless. the cops called us, and we had to use dental records to identify his bloated body. My Uncle Gerald did not die from the elements. My Uncle Gerald died from entitlement. And I hope everybody in this room recognizes that you don't have the right to farm. It's privilege. And you have to make the decisions you have to make to be able to survive 5 years from now. Just because you were successful 5 years ago does not mean it's guaranteed you're going to be farming 5 years from now. And you got to make the changes today to be able to turn things around and bulletproof your farm against anything. Now, hopefully the markets go back up. Nobody has a crystal ball at the future. But what happens if this is as good as it gets? We got to get realistic about that. And I would argue that and especially when you're farming with family, it's 10 times harder because you have to make joint decisions together. It's just not you making the decisions. But if you guys combine your ideas, you wouldn't believe what you can achieve. Everybody says it's economies of scale that dictate whether you're a successful farmer or not going into this situation. You give me a $40 million farm, and you give me a $5 million farm. And the $40 million farm, everybody's butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions. You give me a $5 million farm, and the family has gone from butting heads to actually being able to sit down and make decisions and pull in the same direction. They get hit by low commodity prices for 5 years. Who is going to be able to make the changes to the operation to be able to survive? Whose family Christmas do you want to be at? Where is farming actually fun? Day to day. I would argue that the ideas I just suggested to you, you can easily go home and do it tonight. On the drive home, you just simply talk to your family in the truck about what your goal is. And if your family members aren't all there, call them up on the cell phone. So when you get home, you park the truck in front of the shop, you leave the lights on. You go into the shop and you get the ugliest spray paint you can find. And you go to the shop door and you spray that number on the door. And your partners will probably give you trouble tomorrow morning. Actually, they will. But the thing is, you can tell them, look, if prices stay at that low level and we don't make changes, we're not going to own that shop door. We're not going to own that shop. We're not going to own the farm in 5 years' time. But if the prices do rise and we improved our efficiencies so we're down to that level, we can always buy a new door. And I believe that this is a time for prayer, but also for action. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. And it's a serenity prayer. And it goes something like this. A serenity prayer is the prayer used by Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? And I'm not saying you have to be an alcoholic to farm. But anyways, the prayer goes like this. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. We can't control the markets, we can't control the weather, but we should be able to control our decisions. And unfortunately, we're not in control of our decisions because of family dynamics. And you've got to change how your family deals with change. And if you can do that, you can bulletproof your farm against anything. We got to stop being tough on one another. Start making tough decisions. And be able to, and if you're able to do that, your family's name will still be on your farm's mailbox in 30 years' time. Tough times never last. Tough farm families do. Thank you very much.